Welcome to In the Loop, a podcast from Plus One Robotics that spans the learning gap between warehouse automation and the technology that is driving the robotics industry. Learn from experts in industrial automation on how the supply chain is transforming as industry leaders explain their contributions to the robotics ecosystem. Listen in and stay in the loop, powered by Plus One Robotics.
Hello, everybody. This is Brent Barcey with Plus One Robotics. You are listening to our In the Loop podcast. We're here today with Stephanie Cannon from Pitney. She is the head of global platform and network at Pitney, and we're going to talk a little bit about supply chain, robotics, and everything that's going on in the world today. So, Stephanie, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
This is the first one of, a series, of 10 we're going to do, and you are kicking it off. So, lucky you and lucky everybody at home.
I feel privileged.
Yeah. So, I know we're going to talk a little bit about COVID-19 and what it's done to the supply chain, what Pitney's been up to and all that kind of stuff. But first, I want to get into robotics and why are you guys doing what you're doing? You know, you've been all over LinkedIn talking about some of the RaaS stuff you guys are up to. What exactly has that done for your business today? How are you here?
Yeah. So when we think about robotics, we're really trying to look at emerging technologies out in the market and how that differentiates us in order to continue to execute on our long-term strategy. And, you know, we have a lot of different portions that we need to do to execute on that. And really, the robotic industry allows us to prioritize capital in different ways. So robotics allows us to use robots as a service model, which then we can take the capital we need to really expand our physical operations.
Let's talk about that. Robots as a service. It's a big buzz term right now. People are confused. Capex versus OpEx. What is robots as a service?
Robots as a service to us is instead of using capital to deploy technologies or emerging technologies that we need within our warehouses that can really drive cost out, bring scalability and flexibility for our customers and our business. What it does is it allows us to pay monthly for those services. And instead of having a capital model that we then have to depreciate over X amount of years, it allows us to really sort of displace, variable labor, and it really becomes a cost of service model.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot of companies that are coming to us and asking those types of questions today, RaaS versus a standard capex, and I think the flexibility, you've mentioned that, I've talked to you in the past, the flexibility that it gives companies like Pitney is huge, right? Because you can take that asset at the end of the 3-year contract with someone and hopefully go redeploy it and start a lease back up with the next round of companies, or if you use the same company as before, that's fine too. But I think it's made things much more flexible with people that are looking to keep capex in the capex bucket, because CapEx is tough to get, and it's precious when you start handing those nickels out. So flexibility, we were talking earlier before we hopped on here about what's going on in the AMR world, and lead times are huge right now for anything that's going into a warehouse, whether it be conveyance or even robots, lead times are going out. So I know AMRs are starting to, we talk a lot about flexibility. I think you guys are jumping into that market, or you're in that market. Let's talk about AMRs and how you see that kind of reshaping the way we design our warehouses today.
Yeah, so let me talk about how we've designed warehouses and how the world sort of designed warehouses. We come in and we put conveyance in. Conveyance is a lot of steel, a lot of belts. It's physically cannot be moved once it's put in there. The way that the e-commerce industry is moving is we're constantly changing, and the evolution is never ending. And so there is more of a need today than there ever was to have flexibility, so that when we do have this evolution and this change, that the solutions we're putting in are not obsolete 2 to 5 years later. And so the way that I think about AMRs, autonomous mobile robots, in case anybody doesn't know what that means, is if we can displace conveyance that is stagnant and put an AMR in, we now have the ability to build for what we have now, and then we can change those configurations, and those things are still useful in the future for us to continue to operate without losing the huge capital investments that we've put into those.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a good point there, because a lot of times you guys are dealing, I'm assuming, in 3 to 5 year contracts. So you need the flexibility of that building is so huge, because you need to be able to turn it around in 3 years. And if it's a new customer, you need to be able to design it for what they need. With the way you just described, it sounds like once that conveyance goes in, it's more like this is what we have, and hopefully it fits into what you want to do, right?
Right. It's there.
Speaking of which, peak season, we're here.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a lot of gray hair on their head and their beards.
Yeah.
I think we've been in peak season for about 1.5 years now due to COVID, right? I tell the anecdote with, if my 80-year-old father can figure out a way to get his groceries from a phone and order things from Amazon and everybody else from a phone, there's a lot of other 80-year-old people doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So how's peak going? Talk to me about what's happening.
So every time we think we're out of peak, we're not. We continue to have this unpredictable market right now with COVID. I do believe that, the industry's starting to rationalize. We're starting to come post-COVID, where COVID isn't really post-COVID. COVID is now just a way of life, right? Yep. And so things are starting to rationalize. From peak season, we have done a lot of things over the past few years to prepare ourselves. We have opened, multiple new facilities across the industry, looking to expand internationally as well into our physical operations. We've invested a lot of money in bringing our assets in-house. So when we talk about driver shortages in the world, we're bringing those drivers in-house. We are also looking at, like I said, advanced robotic technologies. We're also still bringing in, the high-speed automation that we've seen, for many years in the industry. We're spending a ton of investments in talent, right? And talent is everything. And the people that we hire to run these facilities or to run our transportation network. We've also spent a lot of time too investing in our people. And I'll talk a little bit about how we invest. Okay. Before peak season last year, we, as a permanent Pitney Bowes employee, we were sitting about 27% permanent employees. And moving into peak this year, we were up to 50% permanent employees versus contingent or temporary workforce. And One of the biggest movements we want individuals to work for Pitney. This is their family. This is where they come to work every day. And we want to continue to move throughout the next year to get to 70% full-time employees. And we will continue to work to bring in those employees, because if we think about it, we're really on this path of development and growth for our employees that's coming from, if you think about hourly to CEO, we have a program, it's called Hourly to CEO, and how you start here and then could become the CEO of the company, and how we're going to invest in your development and do that. And one of the other things too is it's just talking about robotics and bringing the robotics into our thing. We're now starting to bring more attractive and upskilled jobs to those, and we're creating robot operators. So instead of coming in and being a facer, right? I take a parcel and I face that parcel every day. I now am a robotic operator. I work with the robots. I help deploy those robots. I help work with those. I help optimize those. And really, we're starting to build a collaborative workforce with all these new technologies.
I think a lot of things that we're seeing too, it makes a happier workforce, right? People, it's just from a retention standpoint. I was in a warehouse 2 weeks ago with a really big end user, and they're dealing with a 20% a day turnover, right? So from a quality perspective, from an injury perspective, safety is an overriding priority for you guys. I know for a fact, for Pitney it is. To be able to get these employees to stay and get them jobs where they're not schlepping boxes back and forth and tearing rotator cuffs and all the things that come along with these dangerous and dirty jobs that can happen in a warehouse. It's retaining employees, and human resources right now, as we all know, they're so valuable. Nobody can find people to work.
Yeah.
It's just tough and the ones they do have, they've got to retain them. And if you're dealing with a turnover rate that's similar to the industry, which could be anywhere from 50 to 100% a month, that's tough. And it also shows, because we talked to a lot of people on the floor, that you guys are investing in Pitney in the right way. Because there's companies that if they're not doing what you guys are doing today, they're not going to be around in 2 or 3 years. It's just not going to happen. You need this technology in order to be able to meet the 12-hour delivery window that we all expect after we hit submit on the button, right? So this technology is job security for everybody that's involved in the Pitney family, because you're going to be able to meet those delivery times. So no, I'm excited to hear you say that. So we talked a little bit about what you guys are doing. You're building new facilities all over the countries. Are you guys retrofitting any brownfields right now?
So we are retrofitting in brownfields, absolutely.
Okay.
And when we do that, though, they're full retrofits, right? So we are cleaning the entire facility out and building a brand new automated platform. The way that we've looked at, and I'll sort of step back to talk a little bit about how we think about automation. we are growing rapidly. We have to put up facilities very quickly so that we can continue to expand with as fast as the market is expanding, right? From the amount of customers and the volume that's hitting, right? So we don't have a lot of time to change the wheel or the strategy every day or everything. So we have built here at Pitney what we consider a very unique automated platform strategy, right? And we look at what we would consider a tier 1 or a tier 2 facility. Tier 1 facilities are critical nodes in our network that are really around. If you think about critical nodes, it's really where the people are, right? It's where the volume's at and where the people are. It's not rocket science. And so the way we built this platform, and that platform we will deploy very, very quickly amongst all these sites so that we can open very quickly, expand very quickly. And those are all brownfield or greenfield, but all those platforms will look identical. And then what we've done is we've used our collaborative innovation approach, which is a little bit different, where we're actually looking at not just regular automation, we're going out and looking at completely advanced technologies. For instance, what you guys are doing from an induction perspective, or, parcel sortation, or AMRs, right, to move parcels. Or we're looking even at vision technologies where we can use, Google Glasses to help our maintenance teams now work on the advanced technologies we have. Right. And then we take that program and figure out how to incorporate that program to enhance even the other automation that we're doing in those sites.
So do you have a dedicated team that's doing this?
I do.
Okay, you do. Okay.
I have a dedicated team that is comprised of engineers, technical product managers, as well as R&D and sort of visionaries on, how do we really go out and find. There's so many different companies right now in the industry. It's hard to pick a winner, right? So we really take a look at how do we ensure that we're not finding a company that's just working on a bunch of science fair projects, but we're looking for companies that are really building a technology that's solving a real world problem that we can then deploy and scale across our entire business.
And I think that's what can cripple a lot of companies that are in your position right now. You hit the nail on the head. Science experiments they need to happen, but you guys need to deploy now. You need to deploy yesterday, right? So those two things can't happen concurrently, and I think a lot of companies get bogged down in wanting to do everything at once. They saw a 60 Minutes report where robots can do this, that, and the other thing. Where I think you guys are doing the right approach with regard to your parochial in some scope. Another scope, you're looking at all these crazy technologies that are going to be able to help you 3 or 5 years down the road. But you need to get true hard automation in the building today, right? And we call it pilot purgatory around here. A lot of people get stuck in pilot purgatory because they're like, we thought this thing was going to be able to solve all of our problems, and it only did this. Where a lot of times people, like our salespeople, they go into a building and someone calls them up and says, hey, we want to do this. And we go in there and we go, yeah, that looks awesome, but really what you should do is that.
Yeah.
This is where your ROI is at. This is the low-hanging fruit. And I think that's what people really need to start focusing on is where is the low-hanging fruit that I can get automation in there now, right?
Right. And where I have always, in the collaborative innovation program that we do is we build product roadmaps together with our robotics partners. Like it's a true partnership. And that's what I recommend to everybody is it's not a one-way street, right? And the more you can partner together and provide the feedback to both companies, like, a robotics company, when we're deploying something, telling us like, hey, guess what? In your operations, you should do it like this because that's going to help you be more successful with what we're building and the technology will be more useful. But then we're also providing constant feedback to the company on here's the little things that you can improve that will actually make us better, because our goal is that we're better together, not just, hey, deliver a product to us, and then if it doesn't work, we don't want you to do it.
I think another thing that people they make the mistake of, so you stub your toe. That's okay. Like, don't scrap robotics because this one thing didn't work, right? And I think a lot of folks that are in the end user side are scared of taking a risk, because if it doesn't work, then the spotlight's on them. But you got to pivot. Again, we expect our packages 2 days at a maximum. You've got to pivot in order to be able to meet your customers' needs, right? But
we pride ourselves on not pivoting from the vendor or the partner, but pivoting on the product.
Exactly right.
And figuring out how to fix that portion of the product until we get the perfect product that's really great for us to use.
No, that's so important, because all too often the technology is just being misapplied. I mean, you can still use the technology for what it is you're trying to do. It's just sometimes You get a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it can, like I said, you can stub your toe, but you got to be able to just kind of push through it. Because if you're not around in 3 years. And that's what we're seeing out there in the industry. So that's good to hear. So Stephanie, earlier we talked a little bit about upscaling talent and human resources within the plant. I think one of the main things that we talk about a lot around here is it's all over the walls. Robots work, people rule. And we have the product called Yonder, right? So for those of you who don't know, Yonder essentially is a software based in the cloud, and if a robot gets in trouble, it phones a friend. And our friends today are all sitting here in San Antonio, and we call them crew chiefs. That friend can see what the robot sees, and if it's a package that was given the model trouble for whatever reason, she or he can click on the package and the robot just goes back to work. Or if a piece of dunnage falls into the cage, they can pick up the phone and call Larry on the floor and say, Larry, robot XYZ, there's a piece of dunnage in there, you better get in there and get it out so the robot can go back to work. So it's a really, really robust, awesome technology. We love it. But when it comes to upscaling, you were talking about, taking employees from one job and going to the next. And I think that's the kind of partnership that we love having with Pitney, because you guys are actually having your employees crew chief, which it's awesome, because it really is, it's gamification of what we do here in Plus One. So Stephanie, you talked about upscaling your workforce. Can you dive in a little bit about what Plus One is able to kind of help your team with today on an upscaling standpoint?
Yeah. So, listen, for us, robotics is very new to Pitney. It's something we care very much deeply about. But when we look at how do we upskill our employees, how do we define the new roles, and how do we make sure they're getting the schooling and all the skills that they need, we're really looking for partners like you to help us build out the roadmap and all of the skills that are needed in the training programs. And we will continue to work with you guys, just like the crew chiefs. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
And just like the crew chiefs, we're looking to be able to build job descriptions off of that we can put out in the market. What are the training programs? Maybe we get T-shirts that will have, Pitney Bowes Plus One part, you know what I mean, that we can really start to bring out in the market.
So Stephanie, you mentioned crew chief. So for those of you that don't know, at Plus One, we use the term crew chief. These are the people that monitor the robots, right? So if our product is called Yonder, if the robot gets in trouble, it phones a friend. That friend is a crew chief. Crew chiefs can sit in San Antonio, they can sit in Mumbai, Calcutta, it doesn't matter where they're at, as long as they're on the cloud. And within 4 seconds, the robot will say, I'm in trouble. The crew chief will see what the robot sees on a screen and click the package, the robot goes to pick the package, it goes back to work. So if you're walking the floor, you would never know a Yonder call happened. And I think what's cool about what our companies are able to do together is you guys saw the value in that, and you're upscaling your workforce and said, you know what, as opposed to Plus One doing this for us, we can do this for ourselves. Mm-hmm. We have people that love these robots, they want to learn to work with them, mm-hmm. and you're taking people off the floor and they're going to start monitoring, 10, 20, 30, 40 robots at a time. And that's, to us, that's exactly Eric Nieves and our co-founders, that's why this technology is there. Robots work, humans rule.
Yeah.
And to have humans, as we call this podcast, in the loop, that's how you guys are going to be able to scale too, because another problem that we're seeing, people are selling 99 to 100% solutions. There's no such thing.
Yeah.
There's not. There's too many variations in the packages. Christmas is coming, so everybody's package is going to have, bows on it. Hanukkah is coming, everyone's package is going to have blue and white designs. Then you got 4th of July, and everyone changes the packaging. It's always going to change. The model is always evolving. So the fact that you guys are actually taking your people off the floor and letting them build this model, that's why we have this technology.
Yeah. And how are you guys thinking about how you're going to build out a program to offer to people that are buying your products?
So that's a good question. So we have a very public partnership with the folks in Memphis at FedEx, and they have been very public about what they want to do with regard to essentially creating crew chiefs out of their teams. And I think we have an SOP that is going to be able to take to Pitney and take to FedEx and people like yourselves and go, guys, if this is the way you want to scale, this is the blueprint. Mm-hmm. This is what you're going to be able to do. And it's pretty sweet because, these crew chiefs all sit in pods and they put on their Bose canceling noise headsets and they just have 40 to 50 robots that they're just helping out all day long.
And so you guys are creating a really formalized program that you'll be able to sell in the market to the rest of the people
100%.
That you guys are selling your products to.
We have to, because companies are doing the same thing that you guys are doing. They want the employees to feel a sense of ownership of what's going on the floor, as opposed to us doing it here in San Antonio. We're completely fine with that. Matter of fact, the more buy-in we have from the people on the floor, the more successful that building's going to run. So we love it. And yeah, we definitely have a program for people like yourselves. So that's pretty cool.
That is.
So Stephanie, we talked a little bit about RaaS earlier, and I want to go back to it. In a standard capex model, you guys would go out and find an integrator. That integrator would pull together a bunch of technologies, come into your building, install it, go home and say, hey, lights are on, everything's working well. Yeah. Godspeed. Give us a call if something breaks. How is the RaaS model different?
So robots as a service to us is very, very different. So, we get the technology, we get the software, but really there's a lot more that's entailed into the robots as a service. It's really sort of a full end-to-end service. Like when they say robots as a service, it's a service. So that part of that service is the maintenance contracts where you guys are constantly on site to be able to help us maintain those products. You're able to provide the chief crews that actually help, use the technology with us. The other things that we're getting to is we're getting the software updates, right? So with the technology ever evolving, right? We all know AI evolves every day, right? And so also the updates that you guys are being able to provide us is a part of that entire robots as a service. And then, also as we continue to work with you guys on how do we improve these products, right? All of that stuff is included. We don't have to go back and pay for, a new solution or a new software update. We're really getting a full end-to-end customer experience through the life of that contract. And to that is very, very different than a typical capex model where we sort of take the machines over and own them,
right,
and they're ours.
Right.
These machines really are yours and you own them, and we're using them. No,
that's a very good point. And I think the one thing you mentioned is that, again, partnership, collaboration, there's going to be +1 people in a Pitney Bowes building at any given time, right? Just to be able to, you're talking about AI model updates, all that kind of stuff. You're going to, I kind of see the way this evolves is that you guys are going to be leaning on us, but you have us on the hook too. I mean, it's a two-way street, right? You're going to expect us to be there when you need us, and obviously we need to do that.
And speaking with that too, that's one of the other bigger things. When somebody comes and we accept the technology or the machine and they walk away, right? If performance degrades, we have to go back to them, then we have to pay, and we have to figure out how to get that performance back up. One of the things with the robots as a service models is we have very clear expectations on the service performance metrics. And through the life of that, you guys are responsible for continuing to maintain those service levels, which continues to maintain perfect customer service for us throughout.
Absolutely. We have to. I mean, that's being held to that standard and hitting those metrics is only going to make you better and us better and our model stronger, right? So the RaaS model, it's here. I don't think it's going anywhere.
No.
A lot of companies are pivoting that way just because capex is so precious. So no, I appreciate you taking the time to talk a little bit more about that. Because it's important. Well, Stephanie, you have been very gracious with your time, but before I let you go, I want to know where do you see this thing of ours going in the next 12, 24, 30 months?
Yeah, so I think the industry spends an enormous amount of time talking about robotics in the warehouse, right? The physical warehouse operations. If you think about where the e-commerce industry is going, transportation, trucking, and the way that we move our parcels, middle mile, last mile, is really getting a lot of scrutiny over the years. And, it's one of the largest spends for every company. And so I think if you think about the predictions of the future, we are really going to have to start to pivot beyond warehouse, and how do we use these emerging technologies to start to optimize and have a better quality of how we move parcels outside of that warehouse into the last mile.
No, I read an article the other day that, I mean, the rate of retirement out of men and women that are driving tractors for a living right now is crazy what's going on. You got diesel fuel, that's the rack rate right now, I think it's $3.40 a gallon. That people that are hedging diesel fuel, they get 5 miles to the gallon. The way we move things in this country has to change, right? Yeah. It's just not sustainable because, one, you don't have the people to do it. Two, I think from a government standpoint, the resources that we're putting into these trucks is going to change, right? You're going to see a lot of electrification coming out of that. I think you're right. And we're looking at some different ways to approach the truck problem as well. And that really is the holy grail in our industry, right? Everybody's trying to figure out how the hell do you load a truck? How do you unload a truck? And I think you're going to see in the next couple of years some pretty cool technology come out of our sector that it's going to be able to advance that.
Yeah. And it's how do you load it? How do you unload it? How do you move it? How do you reduce the reliability on, people who are driving those trucks? And I think there's a lot that's came out recently with autonomous vehicles. And, I think we're farther away from that, not because the technology is actually not there. The technology is there. It's more about the government regulations and how do we become thought leaders and like helping the government to understand how to regulate some of those laws in order to get this technology out there and useful into the industry.
Yeah, they're doing it today in Nevada, right? They're running, there's test loads going on as we speak today with autonomous semi-tractors. But again, long stretch of highway, no one's on it. You're right. We're not quite there yet. I know Tesla, they have an electric tractor coming out. The Meyer Corporation up in Michigan, I think they purchased the first 5 of them or ordered the first 5 of them. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out over the next couple of years on the tractor side, because I couldn't agree with you more. The way we get things from point A to point D at this point is it has to change drastically. There's just not enough people out in the world to do it.
Yeah, and I think honestly that's where there's going to be a lot of focus in the industry coming up.
Well, cool. Thank you for your time today, and everybody, thank you for tuning in to In the Loop podcast, brought to you by Plus One Robotics. Again, we were here with Stephanie Cannon, Pitney Bowes, Brent Barcey here at Plus One, saying thanks and see you soon.
Stay in the loop. Powered by Plus One Robotics.